welcome to another episode of Access Granted. I'm your host, Grant Chachere, and last weekend we had a pretty busy weekend in terms of sports in Louisiana. Of course, it was the second week of the college football season. The Saints kicked off their season with a big win over the Panthers, 47-10. Tulane loses in controversial fashion to Kansas State, and we're also going to be talking about surprise, surprise, ULM with their big win over UAB. Usually I try to stick to Southern Louisiana, more specifically New Orleans, for most of my sports coverage. But when something happens somewhere across the state that's pretty noticeable, we're going to talk about on the show. And ULM had a huge win over UAB. But to get things started, we're going to talk about LSU's win over Nicholls State. Nicholls State played really well against LSU, and really in the first half, I really thought that Nicholls head coach Tim Rebo actually had coached Brian Kelly for most of the game. If you looked at the game, Nicholls was really, it looked like they were kind of in it to win it against LSU for a moment in time being. And that says a lot about, and the big reason for that was LSU, with their inability to run the ball, still, in a sense. We'll get to that a little bit later. I'll talk about that in depth. But then also, a big reason for that was the injury for Jacoby Guillory, which we'll also talk about that later. But to kind of start off the game, LSU took the lead. A 2-0 lead because of a safety. There was a bad snap on Nicholls State's first punt attempt on the very first drive of the game. The ball was a bad snap, goes behind the punter, and he just kicks it out of bounds for a safety. LSU gets the ball back. They drive down the field. They had a very short field because Xavier Thomas had an excellent return on I guess you could say a punt kickoff, and he returned it 51 yards. So LSU had a very short field, and they were able to score. They were able to go on a 27-yard scoring drive in 7 plays, and that was capped off by Trey Dez's 1-yard catch by Trey Dez Green, which was the very first catch of his career. So it's a pretty big moment for the true freshman in the very first game at Tiger Stadium, which, by the way, in case you guys didn't know, is actually the 100th anniversary of Tiger Stadium. But then Nicholls State, they get the ball. They get the ball back later, and they go on a very long drive. The drive lasted 7 minutes and 17 seconds, and the running back Colin Guggenheim was able to punch it in from 2 yards out. So it was a very impressive drive by the Colonels. But LSU responds. 3 minutes. They score in 8 plays on 73 yards. They score. They had an 8-play, 73-yard scoring drive, and that lasted about 3 minutes. And that was finished off by a 32-yard pass from Garrett Nussmeier to Kyron Lacey. However, Nicholls will get the ball back. They will go on another long scoring drive, and it ended with a trick play. It was a double pass for a touchdown. And the score is 14-16. However, LSU was able to score on a 4-yard touchdown pass from Garrett Nussmeier to Juwan Johnson. And if you're familiar with the storyline going into this week, Juwan Johnson was moved from defensive back to running back. But really, I mean, if you want to he was a quarterback in high school where he's like the all-time. He's the all-time leader in yardage in Louisiana football history. I believe he's also the leader for total touchdowns in Louisiana high school football history. He comes to LSU. They had him as a defensive back where he was needed. But then when John Emery was out for the year, they moved Juwan Johnson to running back. And he actually got a lot of playing time in the game on Saturday, and he was able to get a receiving touchdown. So, and really, there's a lot of young players for LSU that did some great things. I'll get to that later as well. But going back to the breakdown, start the second half. Nicholls gets the ball first. Colin Guggenheim, who's the Nicholls running back, lines up as the Wildcat quarterback, runs it up the middle, and then he goes 6 to 7 yards with everybody tailing behind them for a touchdown. And that's where it kind of got scary, a little bit scary for LSU. However, LSU would then score so 20 21 unanswered points. Nicholls wasn't able to score again. Blake Baker made some adjustments, and then LSU ended up winning 44-21. So the final stats for that game for LSU: Gary Nussbaum threw for 302 yards, threw 6 touchdowns, which was tied second for most of the time. Only other 2 quarterbacks that were able to throw for 6 touchdowns, of course, are Joe Burrow and Jay Daniels, both of LSU's Heisman Trophy winners. In terms of receiving, C.J. Daniels led the way with the most yards for 71 yards on 4 catches. Kyron Lacey had 3 touchdowns and on 65 yards. Aaron Anderson had a great game as well, having 5 catches for 63 yards. Xavier Thomas, who also had a fantastic game in the returning the ball. He had 5 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. Mason Taylor, 4 catches for 40 yards. And then Jawan Johnson, 3 catches for 16 yards and a touchdown. So it was a pretty effective day for LSU throwing the ball. So of all the receivers that caught balls, you had more than 6 receivers catch balls. I think it was like 7 or 8. So the fact, this just shows you how much depth you have in the passing game when you get able to throw it to 8 receivers in one game. But the major concern for LSU was the running game. And LSU ran the ball for 21 times for 69 yards. The 2 longest runs came from Garrett Nussbaum, who's a quarterback, and Josh Williams. So, and then on the day, you had 3 yards per carry. That's not very good. I mean, obviously, 3 yards a carry is not even enough for a first down. Usually, for a run game to be effective, you want to average at least 4 yards a carry. Why? Because let's say in 3 plays, you get 4 yards every 3 plays. That's 12 yards. That's a first down every 3 downs. I mean, that means you have an effective running game. You're able to move the ball down the field for a first down. But if you take away the 2 quarterback yardage, the 2 quarterbacks who were able to have rushing yardage, Garrett Nussbaum and Ricky Collins. So they had 17 yards combined. So 60, let's do the math. 64 minus 17 equals 47. Now let's take away their carries. So they both had, both had a combined 4 carries. So they had 2 carries each. You take that away. So that's, now you have 17. 47 divided by, that's 2.76 yards a carry. The running backs averaged 2.76 yards per carry. That's not very good. However, there is a reasoning for that. And Nicholls was lining up 7, 8 guys in the box, sometimes even 9 guys in the box. They're really trying to make an emphasis that Nicholls was really trying to make the emphasis that they did not want LSU to run the ball. That's what LSU was trying to go for because they really didn't have the greatest of performances in terms of running the ball against USC. So they were really trying to make an emphasis that they weren't going to let LSU run the ball, which is why LSU had to pass the ball so much, even on the 1-yard touchdown pass to Trey Dash Green. And a lot of times in the past, you would run the ball. But because they're lining so many guys, and although I do think that you still should run the ball on the 1-yard line, LSU looked to the pass because that's where they felt like they could attack Nicholls State the best. That's not my words. That's Brian Kelly's words. Brian Kelly explained why they were trying to throw the ball. And that's simply because they're lining up a lot of guys in the box, 7, 8, 9 guys in the box. So it's unfair. So that's a disadvantage for LSU to run the ball. We have 9 guys trying to attack the ball carrier, so you only got 7 guys in the backfield. and then you also have to take out the quarterback and the running back, right? There's only 5 linemen. There's only 5 people that can block. The quarterback can't really block, and the running back obviously is running the ball. So that's something that LSU needs. If they want to win the SEC, of course you have to find ways to run the ball, right? I understand that they may box up, but you need to run the ball sometimes, right? Especially in those short yard situations. I'm not saying you got to do it every time. I mean, that's what Les Miles did, right? No one wants to do what Les Miles did. I don't think anybody wants to do what Les Miles did because he got fired for it, right? So, but you need to find a way to run the ball more effectively, especially when you can SEC play and you'll be tested against a really good front seven that's out there in Columbia, South Carolina, right? So you really want to get that fixed. Another issue that was pretty obvious in the game against Nicholls was, and I've been saying this, I said this before on the podcast, I've said this before in a lot of the articles I've written for Chris City Sports. They lack depth on the interior defensive line. I think the edges are fine. I really love the edges. I really love Braden Swinson. I really love Xavier Jones, who's greatly improved. I really like Gabe Relaford. I really like Sean Washington. Well, Sean Washington plays more on the inside. I really like Paris Shand. That's what I was thinking. Paris Shand. I really like Paris Shand. I really like. I mean, there's a lot of guys on the edge I really like. So I think LSU's great there. It's just the interior. And that was proven evident when Jacoby and Guillory got hurt on the second drive of the game. I mean, the second defensive series for LSU of the game. And once he got out, that's when Nicholls was able to run the ball really effectively. They ran up the middle, and it was obvious they weren't really running out to the outside. They were just running up the middle, and they really exposed an area where Jacoby and Guillory had that unlocked. He had that locked down, and when you don't have the guy locked down that specific area of the field, that's what happens. That's how Colin Guggenheim was able to run for 145 yards, had 5.8 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns, including the 6-7 yard run, touchdown run, which you literally ran right up the middle. So that's a major concern for LSU moving forward. What we do know is that Sean Washington is the guy to replace Jacoby Guillory. He said so in the press conference. Brian Kelly really liked what he did there. But you really need to get that fixed. I know Ahmad Bros looked really good, and he's going to play a lot more. I know Javier Suggs. They really like Javier Suggs. Gio Paez brings that veteran experience, but you really need some of those other guys to step up as well, including Dominique McKinley, whose development will probably speed up a lot, just because of the loss of Jacoby and Guillory. Also, in other news, I also wanted to talk about for LSU is Jakeem Stewart is. So, if you haven't heard about Jakeem Stewart is the number 1 overall recruit in the country for the class of 2026. He was at St. Aug High School, but he took himself out of enrollment at St. Aug, and that sent LSU Twitter crazy because they weren't sure what he was going to do. Like, was he is he just not enrolled at St. Aug? Is he just like going to a different school, Louisiana? Is he going to IMG? And the reason why a lot of people thought he was going to IMG is because Jakeem Stewart is reclassifying the class of 2025, and there was a lot of smoke there that he was going to IMG. I talked to some people that I trust, and that was the smoke that what was happening. Who's going to go to IMG? But luckily for LSU, will still be in state. He is now enrolled in the car. He will not be eligible to play for Nicholls because it was an in-season transfer, of course. And I think if you're an LSU fan, you could breathe a little sigh of relief. I'm not saying it's almost certain he's going to LSU because Ohio State is very much in the mix. I know USC is very much in the mix. I talked to him about that, about his interest in USC. He really loves USC, man. He really loves USC. The defensive line coach at USC is actually New Orleans native, Eric Henderson, and he's actually not only a great recruiter, but he's also a great defensive line coach. And obviously you have the New Orleans connection there. But the fact that he's staying in the state at the car, it lets LSU keep more of an eye on him and keep more tabs with his recruitment and whatnot. So LSU will be is very fortunate that he wasn't going to leave for IMG Academy, which by the way is in Florida. But moving on, let's talk about their upcoming matchup against South Carolina. I'm going to talk about it briefly. And if you haven't heard, or really nobody's heard yet, but I'm going to announce it now. We will have a very special guest. I will release it either Thursday, or I'm going to release it either on Thursday or Friday. Still trying to decide on that. Right now, if you guys don't know, there is a hurricane going across South Louisiana. So right now I'm trying to get this podcast out as soon as possible. So it will most likely be Friday, but you can all see on Thursday. It's actually Matt Moscona of ESPN 104.5. So that will be out Thursday or Friday. We'll break down what's going on at LSU right now, as well as the upcoming matchup with South Carolina, more in depth. But right now, let's break down South Carolina, what we know so far about them. They have one of the best pass rushers in the country. They're third nationally in sacks, first in the SEC. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both their DNs. One of their DNs is Kyle Kennard. He has 5 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 quarterback hit. He actually transferred in from Georgia Tech, and last year he led the Yellow Jackets with 11 tackles for loss and 6 sacks, and then he also had 2 forced fumbles and an interception. On the other opposite of Kennard, you have Dylan Stewart. Dylan Stewart is a true freshman. He was a consensus 5-star recruit across every single major recruiting site. And so far this season, he's had 6 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 forced fumbles. He logged 5 sacks. I know Georgia Tech as a whole logged 5 sacks and 4 quarterback hurries against Kentucky. They were giving Kentucky all kinds of hell. And actually, Kentucky ran the ball 17 straight times. Something crazy like that in their game last Saturday, which South Carolina won 31-6. They also are great at getting turnovers. They're tied 8th nationally and tied 2nd in the SEC in turnover margin. They're 2nd in the SEC and 5th nationally in turnovers gained. Jalen Kilgore, he's a ball hawk type of. He's a nickelback, but he leads the team in interceptions with 2. He also has 2 pass breakups. A free safety, Nick Emenwari. He has 12 tackles, an interception, and pass breakup. And then you also have cornerback O'Donnell Fortune, who has 6 tackles, a tackle for a loss, and a pass breakup. And then also they're 3rd in the SEC and 10th nationally in defensive passing efficiency, and they're also 5th in the SEC and 19th nationally in pass defense. So not only does South Carolina have a great pass rush, but they also have a great defensive backfield, which is a deadly combo to have on defense. And they're also pretty effective at stopping the run as well. But where they struggle is the offense. They're 2nd to last in the SEC and 122nd nationally in pass offense with 140 yards per game. They're 14th in the SEC and 91st nationally in rush offense with 130 yards per game. They're 14th in the SEC and 84th nationally in total passing efficiency on the offense. So they're not really efficient throwing the ball down the field. And also, I want to mention that when I mean 14th in the SEC, there's 16 teams in the SEC, so they are way at the bottom of the SEC in terms of those numbers. Their quarterback, Lenore Sellers, is a true freshman. He was a 4-star recruit. So far, he's only completed 54% of his passes for 280 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception. Brian Kelly mentioned him a lot in his press conference because of his athleticism. From looking at the film, Lenore Sellers kind of reminded Kelly of a Anthony Richardson type of quarterback. He is pretty athletic, although the stats show it. He's a pretty athletic quarterback. And then you also have the running back in Raheem Sanders, 37 carries, 142 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and he has a measly 3.8 yards per carry. But if you haven't heard the name Raheem Sanders, or you may be, but if you're not, I know a lot of people who cover SEC football or who watch SEC football or watch LSU in the past. You know who Raheem Sanders is by the name of Rocket Sanders. He was the running back for Arkansas the last few years. Last year, he dealt with a lot of injuries, leading him to transfer to South Carolina, where he's now the starting running back. But that's just about it is for South Carolina. I mean, LSU has a great chance of winning in a hostile environment that Williams-Brice Stadium has. It's a very hostile environment, so thank God LSU is playing at 11 a.m. instead of 6 o'clock a.m. For LSU fans out there, that's pretty much a sigh of relief. But, it is a big game. South Carolina tends to play up to their opponents in big games. So LSU has to be careful in these type of settings. I mean, their defense is pretty good. I mean, I just read you the stats. I mean, pretty good is an understatement. So it's very important that you protect Garrett Nussmeier. It's very important that you're trying to get some sort of a run game so you can build off that in the future to build confidence for the offensive line, to build confidence in the running backs, so you can really get this run game going as we're getting ready to start SEC play. But then also, don't turn the ball over. Just don't turn the ball over. And South Carolina is really good at doing that. The worst thing you can do in these type of environments, and especially against a team that's as pesky as South Carolina, is to turn the ball over. So it's very important that you protect the ball. Moving on to the Saints. The Saints had a big time win against the Carolina Panthers on Sunday. What a way to start the season for the Saints. It is actually their 6th straight the 6th straight season opening win, which is pretty surprising given how hectic these last few years have been for the New Orleans Saints. And not only were you able to win against your division rival, but you were able to beat them down. I mean, you scored 47 points. That's pretty impressive. I mean, 47 points. I mean, think about how bad that offense was last year. Like the fact that we're talking about the Saints scoring 47 points to open the season. It's pretty remarkable. I'm not going to say the Saints have an elite offense just yet based off of one game. And of course, I still want to see him as the season goes on because, of course, I'm a little bullish on the Saints when it comes to the opening the season pretty well because the last 2 years have not been great. And also I don't have much confidence. I don't have much confidence in Dennis Allen, nor do I have confidence in the Saints organization right now. Although Clay Kubiak what a debut for his first time calling the plays as the main play caller on the offense. So a pretty impressive performance. So Derek Carr, 19 for 23, 200 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Alvin Kamara led the way in rushing with 15 carries on 83 yards with a touchdown. Jamal Williams, 38 yards on 11 carries. with a touchdown. Taysom Hill had a pretty effective day running the ball, 5 carries for 35 yards. And Derek Carr running the ball, 2 carries for 13 yards. Not much, but hey, we'll take it. Derek Carr running the ball, that's something. In the receiving game, Rashid Shaheed led the way with 73 yards on 3 catches and a touchdown. Foster Moreau also had a touchdown catch, while also having 4 catches for 43 yards. Alvin Kamara, 5 catches for 27 yards. And Juwan Johnson had a receiving touchdown as well, catching 2 balls for 26 yards. So that pretty effective day for the Saints offense. Lante Taylor, by the way, probably the player of the game, in my opinion. He had 3 sacks coming off the edge and a pass deflection. You can't get a better game in terms of pass rushing from your cornerback, right? He's not like a linebacker, outside linebacker, or defensive end or defensive tackle. He's one of your starting corners. So what a fantastic way to start the season for Lante Taylor. And maybe he can produce more games like that. I mean, I'm not expecting him to even have a sack for the rest of the season, given the position he plays. But hey, like, if he could do that, I'll take it. But Tyrann Mathieu, he had a fumble recovery. And Demario Davis, 4 tackles and a sack. So that's pretty much your notable statistics. Will Harris and Jordan Howden also had an interception each, giving Bryce Young all kinds of hell. And Bryce Young, I mean, he had a rough game, man. Rough. 13 for 30 for 160 yards and 2 interceptions, and he got sacked 4 times. Oh, man, I feel bad for that guy, man. I really do. I mean, that's a horrible game, man. I mean, people are giving the benefit of the doubt that, he's playing for arguably one of the worst franchises in professional sports right now, but that is a horrid game. Horrible, terrible, awful, horrible. I mean, that's bad. I knew he played bad, but I had to look at the stat sheet one more time just to make sure, because I know he played bad, but when you look at the stat sheet, you don't realize how bad he really played. But the Saints will travel to Dallas to take on the Dallas Cowboys. 12 at noon Central Time. Of course, it will be on Fox. So it'll be a big game for the Saints to see really where they're at. And really, these next 4 or 5 games aren't going to be tough for the Saints. You got at Dallas. You come back to New Orleans. Then you got to play the Eagles, which is also a very good team. Then you got to go to Atlanta, to Kansas City. Then you come back, and then you have to play Tampa Bay. So that's a brutal schedule for the Saints. Brutal schedule for the Saints. So, if you want to, if you really want to, you have to win against. If you want to get through that brutal schedule, you have to win against Dallas, right? Because it's not going to be easy getting wins out of that schedule. That's just a depth row of teams right there. So it's very important that the Saints were able to pick up this win last Sunday. Very important for the Saints to pick up a win against the Cowboys next Sunday, especially for Dennis Allen, because right now Dennis Allen is coaching for his job. And that's it. He's coaching for his job, and maybe even Mickey Loomis. His job might be jeopardy right now. So very important for the if they want to keep the jobs, very important for the Saints to win against the Cowboys, given their schedule right after that game. All right, let's talk about some Tulane football. Tulane had a very, very controversial loss against Kansas State. I mean, Tulane looked fantastic throughout the game. I mean, they were absolutely fantastic. Fantastic. I thought they played a fantastic game. I mean, Darian Mensah, 19 for 29 for 342 yards. So, he completed 65% of his passes. He had a great game. I mean, what a game for the redshirt freshman. And that really, to me, was his breakout game, in my opinion. I think even though that was a losing effort, I mean, that just shows you what, that Tulane will have this quarterback for the next 2-3 years. Just shows, I mean, he was awesome. He was awesome. I remember there's a touchdown throw he had to Alex Bowman in the corner of the end zone to take the lead 27-20 at the beginning of the fourth quarter. I thought it was a beautiful touchdown pass. So, he had a great game. But Tulane, they had, like I said, they played an awesome game. So to get the game going, Kansas State takes the lead with field goal. Tulane drives the ball down in just 5 plays, and that was finished off by Mekhi Hughes' 3-yard touchdown run. So the fact that you're able to travel 73 yards in just 5 plays shows you how good this offense was clicking early on. Darian Mensah, 36-yard touchdown pass to Darian Mensah to take a 14-3 lead. But Avery Johnson comes back, throws a 7-yard touchdown pass to Avery Johnson. But then Jacob Barnes kicks a couple field goals to push Tulane's lead up by 10 points. After Kansas State kicks a field goal, Kansas State ties the game with a 45-yard touchdown pass to J.G. Giddens from Avery Johnson. Alex Bowman, I just mentioned the beautiful touchdown pass he threw to Alex Bowman. He threw that, they take the lead, but then Dylan Edwards of Kansas State ties the game up with a 13-yard touchdown run, and then Kansas State has a 60-yard fumble return for a touchdown, which ultimately ended up being the game-winning touchdown. But going over the stats again, Mekhi Hughes had 128 yards on 21 carries for a touchdown. Mario Williams had a great game. Once again, 6 catches for 128 yards. He didn't score a touchdown. But, it just shows you how much of a deep threat he could really be for Tulane. Dante Fleming, 4 catches for 97 yards. Alex Bowman caught both of Darian Mensah's touchdowns for 49 yards. Guy Hughes had a great game, catching the ball in the backfield for 5 catches and 37 yards. And Keith Brown, 2 catches for 31 yards. But the reason why this game stood out to a lot of people, especially in the New Orleans area, was the ending. What happened was on the very last drive, Tulane was driving down the field. Darian Mensah had a 50-yard run where they're able to get down to Kansas State's 2-yard line. And so you had so it was first and goal on Kansas State's 2-yard line. It seemed like they had the game time touchdown. It was a beautifully drawn play by Tulane. Very similar to the call that Brian Kelly made versus Alabama to on the game-winning 2-point conversion. So Mensah hit Keith Brown near the left pylon to win for what seemed like the game time touchdown. However, Dante Fleming was flagged for offensive pass interference for impeding a defender's path toward Brown. However, if you look at the play itself, if you actually zoomed in on the play itself, Dante Fleming really didn't hold on to him, nor did he really impede his direction. Actually, if anything, if you want to look at the play again, Kansas State was holding on to Dante Fleming more than Dante Fleming was holding on to the Kansas State defender. And it made a lot of people upset. I mean, I saw over Twitter, my boss, Ken Trahan, thought the same thing. He thought that it was kind of a bogus, it was a bogus penalty. And it ended up costing Tulane the game, really, because 2 plays later, Darian Mensah throws the essentially the game-winning interception for Kansas State. Kansas State gets the ball back on an interception, and ball game 34-27. Kansas State avoids a upset at ULM Stadium. It was just a bad call. Usually I say this about bad calls all the time. You don't want to play bad enough where you put the game in the ref's hands, but Tulane played such a great game at that moment that I can't really say that because the refs screwed it up. I mean, humans make mistakes. I get it, but you cannot make that call at that point in the game. I mean, it was a bad call. It was horrible call. And that's the thing I hate about refs sometimes. I try to ease off the refs a bit, just because obviously not every game is you can't blame the refs for every game, right? You just can't. But in this game, you can't make that call. Matter of fact, why would you make that call? It was so obvious that it wasn't a penalty, but they decided to fill the flag anyway. Tulane loses in heartbreaking fashion. But I really loved what I saw at Tulane on Saturday, and they have a great chance to continue its success that it's built in the last few seasons. But moving on to some brighter news. This really caught my attention. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I really don't, in terms of my coverage, I really don't leave Southern Louisiana in terms of college sports because, a lot of the stuff that happens down here, you got Tulane, New Orleans, LSU, and Baton Rouge. Of course, you got UL and Lafayette. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And then also the schools up north really haven't been good in recent years. But ULM seems like it's going in the right direction. ULM, they start the season 2-0, and they picked up a huge victory over UAB. On Saturday, they beat UAB 32-6 in dominating fashion. And really, this was a revenge game for ULM head coach Brian Vincent. If you guys don't know this, Brian Vincent is an Alabama dude. He grew up in Alabama, coached high school football in Alabama and the Birmingham area. He was a longtime offensive coordinator for UAB. He really helped not only rebuild UAB's program in 2014 when Bo Clark took over, and they had their first winning season over 10 years or whatnot. But when UAB shut down the program, he stayed on the staff, and he remained offensive coordinator there for the next 4 seasons. And then in 2022, he became the interim head coach when Bo Clark resigned because he had a lot of health issues they had to take care of, and he wasn't able to coach anymore. And he did a great job leading the UAB to a 7-6 year and a bowl win. And a lot of people thought that he was going to get the job, right? I mean, why not? He knows the area. He was a high school football coach in the area. He's beloved in that community. A lot of people thought he was going to get the job, but UAB decided that they're going to go with somebody else, and that somebody else was Trent Dilfer, who had only been coaching for a few years at a high school in Nashville, Tennessee. And I guess they tried to go with the Dion angle, and it really has not worked out. UAB finished the season last year. I believe they were 3-9, 4-8. And this season they got their butt whooped by the guy that UAB probably should have hired, 32-6. It was a great win for the Warhawks. I mean, they just beat UAB in every single facet of the game. I mean, anytime you beat a team 32-6, you score over 30 points on a team, and then you also held them to under 7 points. Pretty good. ULM was able to run the ball for 209 yards, scoring 2 touchdowns. This is a great game all around for the Warhawks. I mean, they forced a safety. They had a 30-yard pick six. I mean, UAB had, they had a great game. I mean, not UAB, ULM just had a great game. And it would be pretty interesting to follow this war team for the rest of the season. I think Brian Fitz is doing a great job already. You picked up two pretty, you're start the season off 2-0. They do travel to Texas, however. Oh boy. But to start the season 2-0, it's good for this war program, but then also the city of Monroe to pull off that big win. And also, there was a video actually, just kind of encapsulate the whole thing. So at the end of the game, they have their, coaches shake hands and whatnot. It is every game. Coaches shake hands, players step up, you name it, unless, the crowd rushes the field. But that's usually how it goes. And the two coaches met up. They shook hands. Hey, great game, blah, blah, blah. But, and coaches are usually escorted by, policemen, a couple of policemen to make sure they have the safety, in case, somebody, of course, is crazy enough to go on the field and do some crazy stuff. But that's why those coaches usually have those cops around them. Of course, they're security escorts. The police officers who were escorting Trent Dover to shake hands with Brian Vincent actually dapped up and hugged Brian Vincent. Why? Because they knew Brian Vincent. He was at UAB recently. He was there at UAB for a while. They know him. And not only that, they had to, escort Brian Vincent to middle of the field to do this, same to opposing coaches to shake their hands after the game. So they probably had a pretty close relationship where they're hugging the opposing coach. And how demoralizing is that for Trent Dover, right? They just dapped up the dude that you just got your butt beat by. Bro, that's bad. But anyway, that's going to wrap up the show for today. Make sure you tune in soon as Matt Moscona will be joining the Ask This Grant podcast. I actually had him on. I'm going to upload that sometime later this week before Saturday. So stay tuned in for that. Great conversation with Matt Moscona. Fantastic for a guy like him to come on my show. Given his stature throughout the Louisiana sports media world, and I'm still kind of starting out in a sense. So I was really excited to have him on. Had a great time talking with him about LSU football, and also we'll have some other episodes. We'll probably have one more episode after that be released this weekend as well. But anyway, I'm your host, Grant Chachere of Ruger Sports Media, owner, founder, you name it. Also, I'm a reporter and columnist for Crescent City Sports. So make sure to check out all my articles on crescentcitysports.com. But anyways, adios. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the Ruger Sports Media podcast. And make sure to follow us everywhere on social media.